What's that familiar saying? When life gives you lemons, make lemonade, right? As I parked in front of the building containing our one-bedroom apartment, shared with my wife, Kelly, I pondered the state of our marriage. Was it transforming into a basket of spoiled lemons? Or was it just my imagination? Exiting the car, I retrieved the mail from our box. More bills, ads, and mostly addressed to occupant. I felt exhausted, a regular occurrence from working 16 hours a day, 4 days a week, not to mention the one day off from the nearby fast food place. The reason for my hectic schedule was simple. We had bills to pay, and we aimed to save for a future house. Additionally, I wanted to plan something special for Kelly on our approaching 5th anniversary. It's not like Kelly doesn't contribute. She manages the home and works at a travel agency, though the pay isn't exceptional. As for me, I dedicate 40 hours a week to a customer service job where I'm constantly on the phone addressing complaints or processing orders for our clients. It can become monotonous, but the pay is decent, and we enjoy a great benefits package. I earn $18 per hour, with monthly commission checks and a bonus every 6 months, based on the company's overall performance. Typically, my commission checks exceed my hourly wage. On top of that, I work part-time at the fast food place, handling orders and transactions. It may sound mundane, and at times it is, but it's a welcome break from my regular routine. I've been juggling both jobs for almost 2 years, and it's starting to wear on me. On the positive side, I've stabilized our finances and saved a substantial amount for a house down payment, bringing in over $7,000 a month before taxes. My plan is to eventually quit the second job once our financial situation allows. After our upcoming anniversary cruise, I intend to reassess our finances. Due to my schedule, Kelly has been handling the bills for the past year, and so far, she seems to have things under control. Through her job, Kelly secured tickets for a 5-day Caribbean cruise for us at a significant discount. Consequently, I indulged and upgraded to a suite with a balcony and a pleasant ocean view. I eagerly anticipated spending quality time alone with her on the open water. Both of us arranged to take vacation simultaneously, set to depart after work tomorrow, which happened to be Friday. I trudged up the stairs to our apartment and opened the door. The place was dark, and I couldn't hear anything except the clock on the wall. Strange, I thought. Kelly didn't mention not being home. Placing the mail on the table, I flipped the light switch. The place was clean and tidy as usual, but something felt amiss. "Kelly, I'm home," I called out, receiving no response. Entering the kitchen, I noticed nothing prepared. Typically, she leaves a covered plate in the refrigerator on days I return home late, but there was nothing. In the bedroom, the bed was made up, but Kelly was nowhere to be found. I pulled out my phone and attempted to call, but it went straight to voicemail. "Kelly, this is Sam," I said. "By the way, Sam Carmichael. Where are you? I'm at the apartment. Please call me." I hung up and sent a text, receiving no response. In the closet, I noticed several items missing from her side. Where could she have gone? I wondered. Did she leave me? Opening her dresser drawers, I noticed some of her things were gone. In the bathroom, most of her toiletries were missing. Then, I saw it. An envelope on the bathroom counter, addressed to me in her handwriting. Shaky, I grabbed the envelope and opened it. Moving to the living room, I sat down and read her letter. The letter began without the usual, "Dear Sam," just Sam. This didn't bode well. As I continued reading, it conveyed that she was aware this might be difficult for me to comprehend, and anticipated my anger. She expressed a desire to explain that she had been involved in an affair for the past several months, and was currently with the other person on the cruise we had planned for our anniversary. She mentioned our discussions about having children, but confessed that she didn't want to have children with me. She acknowledged my qualities as a hard worker and provider, stating that I would make a wonderful father to whatever children she had. She revealed that she had stopped taking contraception at her lover's request for the last 3 weeks to ensure he would be the one to get her pregnant. She apologized for the coldness of her words and assured me that her lover, Jake, was a good man in more ways than one. According to her, everyone at work was aware of their relationship and supported their decision to go away together. The letter continued, stating that her colleagues believed I would be an excellent father to the children Jake and she planned to have. She admitted to having fallen in love with Jake, but clarified that it was not the same love she felt for me as a husband. She likened her current feelings to the love between close friends or siblings. Despite this shift in emotions, she expressed that she did not desire a divorce and believed it would be best for us to remain married. This way, our combined insurances could cover her pregnancies, and I could raise Jake's children. The letter outlined changes for the future, including spending nights at Jake's place and him spending nights at our place. It suggested I find alternative accommodations on those nights, possibly by considering a third job to keep busy while they were together. She mentioned that love-making relations between us would no longer occur, as Jake insisted on exclusivity, and I no longer excited her. Acknowledging the potential for anger and contemplation of divorce, the letter warned of the legal consequences, assuring me that pursuing divorce would result in securing retirement benefits, half of my paycheck, and child support. Despite recognizing the pain, the letter conveyed that a part of her was hurting too. She and Jake decided to take the cruise using the tickets I had purchased, blocking my number to prevent calls or texts. They planned to share pictures and videos to show what I was missing and ensure her safety. The letter concluded by stating that I had to go as the taxi was waiting, and she was meeting Jake at the airport. They opted to leave a day early for a less tiring start to their cruise. She promised to contact me upon their return, and I could pick her up again. The letter expressed regret, but stated that this was the way things had to be from now on. It was signed, "Your friend, Kelly." I sat in shock as the letter slipped from my hand. Friend? What was that about? With a friend like Kelly who needed enemies? I pondered. Yes, things had seemed off these past months, but I thought it was due to my schedule. That's why I invested in that cruise. The more I mulled over that letter, the angrier I became. I yanked the ring off my finger and hurled it across the room. To hell with her and her ridiculous notions. If she believed I would sit here and accept this, she was out of her mind. I glanced at the clock, 3 a.m. With only 5 hours until my day job, I knew I'd get just a few hours of sleep. Contemplating sleeping in the bed, thoughts of her with this Jake guy flooded my mind. Opting for the couch, I grabbed a pillow and an Afghan and lay down, too exhausted to stay awake. I drifted off, only to wake the next day wondering why I was on the couch. Reality hit when I remembered the previous night. Checking my phone, I hoped for a message deeming it a joke, but sadly, that wasn't the case. Dragging myself to the bathroom, I showered, dressed, and hastily grabbed a cup of coffee for the road. Attempting to set aside personal problems at work proved challenging, especially listening to others complain about perceived issues. Though I did my best, colleagues noticed my distracted state. After lunch, my supervisor, Wanda, called me into her office, a signal that there was an issue. She expressed genuine concern, motioning for me to close the door. Wanda inquired about my well-being, asking if everything was okay at home, and suggesting that I consider quitting the fast food job since I was already working 2 jobs. After a moment of consideration, I decided to open up about my situation. I confessed to Wanda that everything was not okay at home. Trusting her previous openness, I felt she deserved to know the details. She asked me to share, and in response, I retrieved the letter Kelly left and handed it over. Wanda read the letter, and when she finished, she returned it, shaking her head. She empathetically stated that we needed me to have my head completely in the game at work. She mentioned hearing from some colleagues who informed her about my short-tempered and snippy behavior that morning. After reading the letter, she expressed understanding of the challenges I was facing. Realizing I had vacation scheduled for the next week, she suggested I take the rest of the day off with comp time. Additionally, she offered to refer me to someone and wrote down the name and number of the attorney she used in her divorce. Handing me the information, she mentioned that she had been in a similar situation and encouraged me to give the attorney a call, informing her that Wanda recommended her. Grateful for the advice, I expressed my thanks, and she encouraged me to take the next week to sort things out and return with a clear mind. She added a light-hearted comment, saying, "And remember, there's lots of fish out there," to which I acknowledged, "I hear you, Wanda." I thanked her again, and then I shut down my desk, informing my cube mate that I would be back in a week or so. He waved as I left. Upon reaching my car, I retrieved the note Wanda provided and dialed the number. The receptionist at the law offices of Hawkins and Bledsoe answered, inquiring about the purpose of my call. I requested to speak with Linda Hawkins, mentioning that Wanda Green had recommended her to me. The receptionist placed me on hold and returned after a couple of minutes, informing me that Miss Hawkins was scheduled to be in court that afternoon, but had an open slot at 4 p.m. She asked if that would work for me, and I confirmed that it would be perfect. I inquired about the office location, and after jotting down the address, I thanked the receptionist and ended the call. Checking the time, I realized I had enough time to visit the travel agency where Kelly worked. I hoped to intervene and, if possible, seek a refund for our plans. Upon reaching the agency, parking the car and entering, the 4 other women in the main office glanced up, their expressions hinting at their awareness of the situation. I approached the front desk where Julie, the receptionist, sat. She greeted me, and I stated my intention to see Kelly. Glancing around, Julie informed me that Kelly wasn't present that day. She handed me a large envelope, explaining that Kelly had informed them that I knew and asked her to give me the envelope if I came in. The other women wore smirks, leaving me uncertain about how much they knew. Upon opening the envelope, I was hit by the mixture of Kelly's scent, urine, and an unfamiliar odor. Inside, I found a pair of her soaking wet underwear folded up. Repulsed, I used a pencil to inspect further and discovered her rings covered in a white, gooey substance, unmistakably Jake's seed fluid. At the bottom of the envelope, there was also a USB drive. Disgusted, I confronted Julie, who smirked. As I looked around, I noticed the other women doing the same. I asked if they found it funny, and Julie, embarrassed, looked away. She explained that the thumb drive contained pictures and videos from a bon voyage party they had organized for Kelly and Jake the previous afternoon, with Kelly suggesting that I would enjoy them. An older woman emerged from the back and leaned against the front office wall, observing me. She informed me that Kelly and Jake had already left and that everyone at the agency was aware of their relationship. When I asked if they approved of it, she shrugged and asked what I wanted. I stated my desire for a refund, explaining that I had paid for the cruise and wanted my money back since I didn't have the tickets. She replied that the tickets were non-refundable and mentioned that it was nice of me to let Kelly put one in Jake's name. I disputed that claim, asserting that what Kelly did was fraudulent and insisted on getting my money back. However, she refused, saying it wouldn't happen. In frustration, I declared that I would take legal action, suing the agency and everyone involved. As I turned to leave, Julie stopped me, apologizing for the situation and explaining that Kelly had led them to believe I approved of her actions. She urged me to let Kelly have the cruise, emphasizing that there would be other opportunities. Curious about Julie's relationship status, I asked if she was married, and she responded negatively. I then expressed the pain of being betrayed by someone claiming to love me, and warned her of the potential future pain she might experience. I emphasized my disdain for Kelly and left with a harsh message for Julie to relay. I told Julie to inform Kelly that I hated her and never wanted to see her again. I added a shocking statement, expressing the hope that she rots and dies of AIDS. Julie and the others appeared shocked, and I concluded by announcing my intention to see them all in court before leaving before anyone could respond. With a couple of hours before my appointment at Linda's office, I parked in a shady spot at a park and took a nap in my car after setting my phone's clock. Reflecting on the lack of justice in the world, I asked myself, is there no justice in the world? The nap provided some relief, but my neck felt stiff and sore when I sat up in the driver's seat. After sipping lukewarm coffee, I started the car. Upon reaching the building housing Linda's office, I checked my appearance in the mirror. I looked worn out. Attempting to tidy my hair, I grabbed Kelly's letter and the envelope from Julie before heading inside. In the office, a pleasant blonde receptionist took my name and directed me to a seat. She offered a cup of fresh coffee, which I gratefully accepted. A few minutes later, she led me to Linda's office and closed the door behind me. Linda Hawkins, older than me but still quite attractive, stood up and extended her hand, which I accepted. She greeted me, expressing pleasure in meeting me, and suggested I have a seat. I thanked her and took a seat, responding that she could call me Sam. She acknowledged with a slight smile and encouraged me to address her as Linda, asking about the purpose of my visit. I informed her that I wanted to explore the possibility of getting a divorce. Linda questioned my reason, and I explained that my wife was cheating on me. To emphasize the gravity of the situation, I handed her the letter Kelly had left for me. Linda read the letter, frowning as she did so, and then handed it back to me. Inquiring about the envelope, I passed it to her, cautioning her about its contents. She opened it, reacting with a contorted face due to the unpleasant odor. After closing it back up, she handed it to me and expressed understanding, stating that she didn't blame me for wanting a divorce. She asked about my goals in the divorce, to which I asserted that I wanted essentially everything. I revealed a desire for her to face consequences for her actions, noting not only the infidelity, but also the agency's involvement in defrauding me of more than $2,000. She acknowledged my lack of knowledge about divorce laws and mentioned that the family court system in the state prioritizes economics over justice. Linda, expressing gratitude for the recommendation, explained that having no children was advantageous in divorce proceedings, as divorce is often hardest on children. When I mentioned that we were renting a one-bedroom apartment and working extra to save for a down payment on a house, Linda noted that it was one less thing to deal with. She inquired about my wife's employment at AA Travel Agency, asking about her income. I disclosed that she earned about the same as my base pay, approximately $800 an hour. Linda explained that the court might order me to provide support for a couple of years unless she remarried, and we would likely have to split all assets, including any retirement plans. Regarding her infidelity, Linda clarified that it couldn't be mentioned in the papers due to the state being a no-fault state. However, it might be used in negotiations. When asked about counseling, I expressed that I had not considered it, as there was no way to move past the situation. Linda mentioned that the court might still order counseling, and I inquired about the threat of my wife bringing her lover into the apartment. Linda inquired about my wife's ability to bring people into the apartment, asking if her name was on the lease, and I confirmed that it was. She explained that unless there were threats of damage, there was nothing I could do to prevent her from inviting people into the apartment, as she lived there as well. I expressed frustration at the situation, and Linda acknowledged that divorce is challenging, describing it as something one gets. I chuckled at her comment. Linda suggested that my wife might have a change of heart upon her return and reconsider the marriage. She proposed the idea of a legal separation to allow for a cooling down period, and if I still wanted a divorce after that, we could proceed. Linda also advised me to consider quitting the second job, as earning more money could lead to increased financial demands. She noted that I seemed to have been overextending myself for a while. Expressing my frustration, I asked about getting a refund for the cruise. Linda assured me that we could explore options to address that issue. We discussed the particulars, and Linda made notes as we talked. When we finished, she handed me a checklist of things to do, most of it dealing with the bank. I shook her hand and left, stopping at the front desk to leave a retainer on my way out. I still felt like crap about the whole situation, but at least I was doing something about it. I considered quitting the second job. It was wearing me out anyway, so I decided to go in and talk to the manager tomorrow and give my notice. On the way home, I stopped at the bank and made the changes Linda suggested. I paid off the joint credit card Kelly had and canceled it. Then I emptied out half of all our joint accounts and put it into the separate account I had already set up for the bonuses and commissions. Kelly didn't have access to that account anyway, so I figured it would be safe. I had planned to use that money for a house, but those plans were out the window. I got home, grabbed the mail out of the mailbox, then ate some leftover meatloaf Kelly had made a few days earlier. She had a habit of cooking large dishes, then freezing what we didn't eat for later. It took a while to thaw, but that was okay by me. I sat down with my dinner and looked through the mail, mostly junk, crap, and advertised fluids addressed to occupant or resident, except for one piece that looked like a handwritten invitation with detailed calligraphy addressed to me personally from something called Ramnusha Gallery. I never heard of it and nearly tossed it as well, but I felt compelled to open it. What I found was an invitation to a private art showing. I wasn't sure if this was something Kelly signed me up for or not. She had always tried to get me interested in the arts, but I frankly just didn't have much time with my work schedule. The invitation said I should be there at 9:30 a.m., sharp. As I looked at the invitation, I felt as though this was something I needed to do. Don't ask me to explain it. I put the invitation on the refrigerator door with a magnet and decided to go. If nothing else, it might take my mind off my problems for a bit. I wore a pair of latex gloves and opened the envelope provided by Julie earlier. Overcoming the unpleasant smell emanating from its contents, I retrieved the underwear, noticing the ring resting in the wettest section. Placing them in a plastic sandwich bag, I sealed it tightly. I wiped down the USB drive with drinks, uncertain if it would make a difference, but opting for caution given the enclosed items. Setting up my laptop, I inserted the drive, anticipating I might not appreciate its contents, and my intuition proved correct. The folder contained pictures featuring Kelly alongside a man, presumably Jake, enjoying drinks and socializing with office friends. Jake's hands were prominently on her in the photos, and the other girls wore smiles. More images depicted Jake's closeness, while other girls, even their supervisor, watched. The penultimate picture showed Kelly over a toilet bowl, undressed, with two girls holding her underwear, one of them being Julie. In the underwear midst were her rings, the ones I had placed on her finger almost 5 years ago. Examining the photos, I could discern a stream of urine soaking the undergarment and the gold rings. The final picture portrayed Kelly still undressed over the toilet, underwear and rings underneath her, smiling into the camera as she waved. The others joined in, smiling and waving with her. I had never felt so humiliated in my life. Soon after, a surge of something else overwhelmed me: hatred. At that moment, I despised her with every fiber of my being. Exiting that folder, I explored another containing several video files. Reluctantly previewing them, I was more focused on hearing what she and the others had to say rather than witnessing her with this individual. I reached the last video, curious about the reason behind her actions of urinating on her rings. Starting the video, I observed her adjusting herself over the bowl as others brought in the underwear. Kelly removed her rings as Julie and another girl extended her underwear beneath. They handed her rings to the older woman, who carefully placed them on the garment to prevent them from falling into the toilet. Jake inquired if she was ready, and Kelly, expressing a need to use the bathroom, looked directly into the camera, stating her intentions and expressing her feelings towards our marriage. She instructed one of the girls to bring in the envelope, emphasizing the inclusion of photos and videos. Kelly directed Julie to ensure that I receive the envelope if I come by the next day. Julie agreed to do so, and Kelly bid me farewell, waving along with the others. After the waves, Jake turned to the camera, assuring that he would take care of Kelly in my absence, and making a derogatory comment about me paying for everything. The video concluded, leaving me with a nauseating feeling. Wasn't typically a violent man, but at that moment, I wanted to eliminate the lot of them with my bare hands and feed the pieces to the dogs. I put my head in my hands for a bit. I was too shaken and angry to cry. All I wanted to do was lash out and hurt someone. Something, anything would do. I couldn't for the life of me understand why she would do this to me. I had never cheated on her, never hurt her in any way. All I ever did was work so that we could have a good life together. All she had to do was tell me I was working too many hours and I would have cut back, but she didn't. I had a thought and pulled up the agency's website. I found it was part of a much larger organization based out of New York and had offices across the country. So I looked and found an email address for the CEO and the chairman of the board. I wrote an email threatening a lawsuit and attached copies of the video, then sent it off. I looked around and saw the pictures of Kelly and me on the end tables and on the wall. I lost it and tore them all down, ripping her image out of every one of them. I was looking for something else to destroy when I heard the doorbell ring. Who is that? I wondered. I looked through the peephole and saw Julie with another woman from Kelly's office. I couldn't remember her name at the moment I opened the door. I growled at them and they jumped back, shocked at my anger. Julie begged to talk, and I questioned their motives, expressing my reluctance to hear anything they had to say. Julie asked if they could come inside, and I pulled out my phone to start a voice recording. Opening the door, I let them in and sat down on the couch, demanding to know the reason for their visit. When asked if they could have something to drink, I declined, urging them to say what they came to say and leave. Julie exchanged nervous glances with the others before conveying that she had talked to Kelly earlier, who was very upset. I responded indifferently and sarcastically suggested that they could make it up to me by drastic actions. They stared at me in shock, and Julie protested that I couldn't mean such things, reminding me that Kelly was my wife. In response, I handed her the letter Kelly left for me. Julie read it, and after returning it to me, she apologized. I accused them of being complicit in Kelly's actions and criticized their behavior in the video. Julie apologized again, stating that Kelly misled them into thinking I was okay with it. Expressing my dissatisfaction, I told them it was time to leave. After a while, they turned for the door, but Julie turned back before leaving, suggesting that she could help me get over this. I dismissed the idea, emphasizing that I couldn't trust her, and urged them to leave and never return. They left, and I locked the door behind them. Later, I decided to drown my sorrows. I drove to the convenience store on the corner, purchased a 6-pack of beer and a couple of packs of cigarettes. I had quit drinking and smoking when we got married, but I decided to hell with it. Upon my return, I sat on the balcony, drank my beer, and ended up smoking several cigarettes before deciding to turn in for the night. The next day, I got up, showered, washed the beer and cigarette taste out of my mouth, dressed, and headed out. Looking online, I got directions to the gallery and realized I had just about enough time to get there by 9:30, so I headed out. After making a cup of coffee for the road, I pulled up to the Victorian house at the address on the invitation and was a bit surprised to see no other cars. Surely others would have been invited to this showing, I thought. Exiting the car, I approached the door. Before I could knock, it swung open, revealing a petite blonde woman in her early 20s. She greeted me as Mr. Carmichael, mentioning that I was right on time. Introducing herself as Dr. Adrestia Ramnusha, she extended her hand, and I shook it. She confirmed that I was the only one attending the meeting and guided me into a room with a covered portrait on an easel. Instructing me to take a seat, she uncovered the portrait, cautioning that it might be shocking. As she lifted the cover, I saw a painting of Kelly lying in a strange bed with Jake beside her. Dr. Ramnusha apologized and covered the portrait again. I questioned how she obtained the painting and whether Kelly was behind this, expressing my lack of a museed fluid. She clarified that Kelly had not put her up to it and suggested we go to her office for an explanation. I followed her upstairs into an office filled with old books and scrolls. She pointed to a chair in front of her cluttered desk, instructing me to sit while she made tea. Confused about how tea could make the situation better, I sat down, still in shock. Dr. Ramnusha handed me a cup of tea, ensuring that I drank it. Strangely, I began to feel a bit better after a few sips. She smiled and sat down at her desk, and I demanded an explanation for what was happening. She nodded and explained that she helps people like me get justice. She had been watching my wife for some time and became actively involved after Kelly wrote the letter to me. She asked if I had any idea about what was going on, and I admitted that I didn't. I interrogated how she found out about the letter, questioning if she was trailing or spying on us and if she was a private investigator. She replied that she wasn't precisely a private investigator, but explained that overseeing all marriages was her expertise for many years. She asked me to watch a video on the monitor, which appeared to be taken in my apartment. The video showed Kelly writing the letter at the kitchen table, and below it, words scrolled through, reflecting Kelly's thoughts as she wrote. The words revealed her intention to prevent me from filing for divorce and her plan to counter by citing cruelty or misuse, as advised by Jake. I asked about the words below the video, and Adrestia explained that they were Kelly's thoughts as she wrote the letter. I questioned how it was possible, and she simply stated that it was proprietary. I asserted that Kelly's claim of misuse was a lie, as I had never done anything like that. Adrestia acknowledged that she knew, but unfortunately in this state, the court would be more inclined to believe Kelly than me, and she was aware of that fact. I remarked that my lawyer didn't mention the details Adrestia shared. She acknowledged that lawyers in the system were the real winners in divorces, and emphasized that seeking justice or fair treatment was futile. Adrestia revealed that Kelly had informed Jake about her plan during a video on the monitor, showing them snuggling together in plane seats. Jake asked if she left the letter for me, and she admitted to it. He predicted my reaction and questioned what she would do when I filed for divorce. She responded that her lawyer would claim I smack and misused her, even though she didn't mention it in the letter. The video ended, leaving me stunned. Expressing disbelief, I questioned how she could fabricate such a story without consequences. Adrestia explained that people pull off such things all the time. I then expressed confusion about Kelly's motives, highlighting my faithfulness, consistent provision, and hard work for our future. Adrestia suggested that perhaps I'd been too focused on finances and not spending enough time with her, though she clarified that it didn't justify Kelly's actions. I mentioned that Kelly could have communicated with me, and I would have given up the second job if I knew this would happen. Adrestia responded that it was no assurance this wouldn't have occurred anyway. I inquired about her suggestions for my course of action. She proposed assisting me in seeking some form of justice and asked if I would be open to that. I affirmed my willingness, seeking more details on how it could be done. Adrestia reminded me of my notion from the previous night, wearing a mischievous grin. Perplexed, I asked what she was referring to. She maintained the mischievous smile, rose from behind her desk, and approached me. Taking my hand, she signaled for me to stand and mentioned that their ship had already sailed early that morning. I acknowledged that I knew, having paid for the cruise. Adrestia agreed, suggesting that we should pay them a visit. Astonished, I wondered how we could accomplish that. She smiled as she held my hand. Suddenly, we found ourselves standing on the deck of a massive cruise ship. I glanced around and saw a few people on the deck, but I did spot Kelly and the idiot standing by the railing. She wore a tiny two-piece bikini that left little to the imagination. They were locked in an embrace, and Kelly was caressing the front of his suit. I cleared my throat to get their attention. Kelly expressed surprise and questioned how I got there and who was with me. I responded, stating that I represented justice and was there to ensure she paid for what she had done to her husband. Kelly and Jake chuckled at my statement. In a threatening tone, Jake demanded to know what I intended to do. As they started walking toward us, they slipped on something, lost their balance, and tumbled over the railing. I rushed to the railing, and Adrestia joined me. We peered over the railing, and Adrestia restrained me. Initially, I didn't comprehend why. Just as they descended about 15 feet, the largest shark I could ever imagine emerged from the water, its mouth wide open, revealing rows of large, jagged teeth. The mouth of this creature had to be easily 30 feet wide. I couldn't recall ever feeling so terrified. As I looked, Kelly screamed loudly, her eyes wide with fear. Suddenly, both she and Jake were in the shark's mouth. The monster closed its mouth, sending geysers of blood back up to the deck. Then it silently slipped back under the water. I heard cries from the deck and observed other passengers vomiting on the deck. Some had phones out, likely recording videos. Adrestia pulled me back, and I heard klaxons blaring. Crew members hurried to the railing to assess if there was anything salvageable, but it was too late. Adrestia grabbed my hand, and suddenly we were back in her office. I felt nauseated, but she swiftly held my head in her hands, and the nausea subsided almost immediately. I expressed shock and inquired if the events genuinely happened. Adrestia seated me back in the chair and poured another cup of tea. She confirmed that it did happen, handing me the tea and suggesting that it would help. I took a sip of the tea and immediately felt much improved. I was still grappling with what I had just witnessed, but the sense of shock had dissipated. Simultaneously, I noticed something else. I felt no remorse whatsoever, no sadness, nothing. I felt nothing for what transpired with Kelly and Jake. I looked at Adrestia, seeking answers. Adrestia informed me that the tea provided would help me cope with the situation, and indeed, I felt much better after finishing it. Despite the fact that I was once deeply in love with Kelly, there was an absence of sadness over her demise, leading me to question my emotions. Addressing my concern, Adrestia reassured me not to worry about any lack of emotion, attributing it to a side effect of the tea that numbs negative emotions. Curious about Kelly's whereabouts, I inquired, acknowledging that I understood she was deceased. Adrestia acknowledged my religious upbringing, noting that I likely wondered about the afterlife. She invited me to follow her back to the showroom where she had unveiled the portrait. There, she uncovered the painting, revealing a drastic change. The portrait now depicted her face frozen in fear, her eyes wide, her mouth open in an eternal scream. Behind her face was the shark's maw, row after row of sharp teeth, awaiting her. Adrestia gestured towards the painting, stating that it represented where Kelly was now, forever captured in her final moments. She explained that Kelly would spend eternity in that portrayal, regretting her decision to wrong me, a sort of self-made hell. As she hung the portrait on a vacant spot of the wall among rows of similar paintings, Adrestia revealed that all the individuals depicted were cheaters, each one regretting their decisions for eternity. I expressed my realization, and she confirmed, emphasizing that this was her concept of justice. She had been carrying out this work for a significant period, and the walls were not even halfway filled. Curious about the duration of her endeavor, I inquired, and Adrestia responded that she had been engaged in this work for a longer time than I could imagine, expressing a sense of sadness. She took my head in her hands and looked at me intently. For a moment, I thought I saw a tear in her eye. Adrestia mentioned that the upcoming days would be challenging, but assured me that she would always be with me, residing in my heart regardless of age. She encouraged me to go on and live a long life, suggesting the possibility of finding a new love, as she believed someone was waiting for me. After a kiss on the cheek, I felt content, and even now, I can't fully explain the feeling. She accompanied me to the door and closed it behind me. After I left, shaken, I drove to my second job and turned in my notice. The manager wasn't too upset, but he understood and wished me well. We left on a good note, and he said he would have my final check mailed to me. I drove back home, grabbed a beer, and sat in front of the television. For a while, I thought it strange that I still didn't feel any remorse over Kelly's demise. I turned on the television and found that the video of the shark incident had already made the news. It turned out that several people had taken video of what happened. As I flipped through the channels, I saw that several news programs were already talking about the feasibility that such a large beast could exist. All of the reports said they were still waiting for the identity of the sufferers to be released. Going online, I found that video of the shark had also gone viral on social media. It was everywhere: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, you name it. I couldn't watch the video, so I turned my computer off. I grabbed a pile of trash bags and went through the apartment, collecting all of Kelly's things. Before long, I had everything packed up and stuffed in her car. I called her mother and told her that she needed to come get it. "Why, Sam?" she asked. I told her about Kelly's cheating, but didn't tell her about Kelly getting eaten by a giant shark. She was understandably upset and said her and Kelly's father would be by to pick it all up later that day. They came by that afternoon and left. After making a tearful plea to patch things up with her, I made it clear that no reconciliation was possible. I still didn't tell them about her getting eaten. I figured they would learn about that soon enough. After they left, I dressed and went to a bar and grill where I consumed a juicy burger and several beers. I got through the rest of the weekend somehow and woke up late Monday since I was technically on vacation. I sat in front of the television with a bowl of cereal as a news report came on saying the offices of AA Travel Agency had been destroyed by fire. According to the report, everyone got out okay, but just barely an hour or so later, I got a call from Julie, who was more than a bit shaken up. She informed me about the office burning down, recounting the strange incident where Kelly's desk spontaneously caught fire. They narrowly escaped the flames. She mentioned receiving a peculiar text from Kelly just before the fire, containing references to sharks and the hounds of hell. Julie expressed confusion about the message, to which I replied that I had no idea. The conversation ended, and I sat back smiling to myself. I took a drive to see Adrestia and ask her about the fire, but the Victorian mansion that housed her gallery was gone. I sat there and looked at the empty lot, wondering what happened. After a while, I shook my head and drove home. Update. After a couple of weeks, I received word from the cruise line about Kelly's demise. They conveyed the news of her pass away and included a check covering the cost of my tickets, along with the payout from the accidental pass away and dismemberment policy linked to the tickets. I reached out to Linda, informing her that our separation was no longer necessary. While she offered condolences, they held no significance for me. A few weeks later, the travel agency's headquarters contacted me. They proposed a substantial sum of money in exchange for my silence and a commitment not to pursue legal action. Additionally, they revealed that the entire office where Kelly worked had been terminated. with considerations for a new team in their revamped office. After contemplating their offer, I decided to accept it. Kelly's parents organized a memorial service for their daughter, but I opted not to attend or send flowers. Although they were displeased, they acknowledged my feelings. Life continued, and it took quite some time before I resumed dating. With the elimination of my second job, I began frequenting the gym to regain fitness. The effort paid off, attracting attention from several women at my workplace. While I went on a few dates, I refrained from committing to a relationship. It took a couple of years before I felt ready to trust another woman at that level. Eventually, I found someone, Marcy, a coworker who went through a divorce after discovering her husband in their marital bed. We've been dating for a while now, and I'm seriously contemplating proposing to her. All in all, life is looking up. Dora Adrestia moved on to the next case that came her way. One day, however, she sat down at her desk and took a long look at everything, the pain, the anguish, and the pleas for help. Overwhelmed, she put her head in her hands and did something she hadn't done for 2 millennia. She wept.